What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and welcome to another tier list video. Today we are ranking the best of the best Pokemon in the Draft League format. How did we come to this conclusion that these 49 Pokemon that I have over here are the best of the best? Well, I play a lot of Draft League. I have been in over 30 Draft Leagues this generation alone, and because of that, we took every single Pokemon that was drafted in round number 1 and then put them on a tier list here. And shout out to Liv, she was the one that went through basically every single one of them and got me that list, so shout out to her. But we're gonna go ahead and jump into it. Also taking a look at this, we have 5 different tiers. The first one is top 10-ish. These are Pokemon that you have an argument for them to be top 10. Second one is gonna be round 1 or round 2. If they're taking round 1, I get it, makes sense to me. If they're taking round 2, that's not a problem either, I get it as well. Round 3 is gonna be, they're good Pokemon, but they're not like that good. They're Pokemon like, and a really good example that I'll give you later on is going to be Pokemon like Dragonite. I think that Pokemon belongs there. It's solid, but doesn't really, doesn't really belong in the top 2 rounds in my eyes. Next is going to be utility Pokemon, because there are certain Pokemon here that should not be on this list. I'm looking at you, Alolan Executor and regular Executor, and a few others. But either way, it's a utility Pokemon tier list. They're going to be there. And the last Pokemon is going to be, why are you here? This Pokemon's like, I don't know why these Pokemon were drafted round 1. And I think I said Alolan Executor before, but no, that's where it would land. Either way, let's go and jump into it. As always, guys, leave a like on the video, subscribe as well, as we're on the road to 2,000 subscribers, and make sure to comment your thoughts on the tier list down below, and where you would make any changes. And if you guys want a link to this tier list, it is down in the description as well. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, starting off with the first one is going to be, obviously, Clefable here. Clefable, in my eyes, is round 1 or round 2. You cannot make an argument for it to be round, like top 10. You can't. But this Pokemon, in terms of what it does for a team, is really useful. It's a great fairy type Pokemon, arguably one of the best in the format, as long as you're not talking about Ubers. Its abilities are fantastic with Unaware and Magic Guard. It gets Rocks, gets Wish, gets Teleport, gets ability to set up with Cosmic Power or Calm Mind. It can do so many different things for a team, but it just relies so much on its abilities that you run a Mold Breaker Pokemon and this Pokemon becomes useless. That's really the main reason why it is in the round 1 or 2 and not in the top 10-ish tier. Next is going to be Alolan Ninetales. This is a utility Pokemon 100%. This Pokemon should not be higher than this. It's basically really only drafted because it is a fast fairy type, or fast ice type, I guess, and it also has access to Aurora Veil with screens. That's really the only reason why. So we'll put it over here. Gengar, it is good, but not that good. I think Gengar has a lot of great things going for it. It's fast at 110. It's got really cool typing and Poison and Ghost, being able to break through opposing normal types with its Ghost Stab or Focus Blast. It has a way to break through the fairy types of the format. It has a way to just destroy a lot of different things. The issue is it's very one-dimensional. The only time you're going to run like a really weird Gengar set is going to be if you're running something like a sub Will-O-Wisp or sub, I guess, Disable. That's really only it. Other than that, it's going to be Scarf, it's going to be Nasty Plot, it's going to be Specs, it's going to be, I guess, Life Orb or Sash, but that's really it. Nothing else really makes a lot of sense for Gengar in my eyes. Alolan Executor and Executor, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Doesn't make sense. Next up, Gyarados. Gyarados is a Pokemon I think is utility. While it's good, it's not good enough to be in the good but not that good tier. I think overall what the Pokemon provides for a team is just basically a great Dragon Dance Sweeper, or a really solid Pokemon that has a really unique typing at Water and Flying with Intimidate. Its distribution of stats are not that great. It's like 81 in terms of its speed stat, which you'd like to be faster or slower, not kind of 81, and you'd rather have the rest of its investment allocated towards its defenses if you want to be more bulky. It does get Taunt, it's a decently fast Taunter, and it does get access to Thunder Wave 2, which is really cool. And obviously you can sweep with Moxie Intimidates, or sorry, Moxie Dragon Dance, or Dragon Dance in general. So it's fine, I think. Next up is Galar Zapdos. This is, to me, a round 1 or round 2. It's on the border between good and not that good, because I can definitely see this thing falling to the good but not that good tier. But for now, we're going to put it over here in round 1 or round 2 and see where we go from there. It's decently fast at 100 base speed. Not bad at all. Next up is Zapdos. I think Zapdos is an argument for top 10. Definitely. Zapdos is one of the best Pokemon on this tier list for sure. The fact that it's got the ability to static things, it's got U-Turn and Volt Switch, which is really, really rare to have. I think only like 15 or something Pokemon get both of them, which is crazy to think about. It gets Defog, it can be crazy with Hurricane now that it gets that. It gets Heat Wave, it gets electric moves, it can Roost Up, it can just be an amazing check to so many different things. I think it definitely deserves to be a top 10 status. Dragonite, good but not that good. Simple enough. Gets Wish, gets Recovery, gets access to Multiscale and Dragon Dance, but it just always feels like it's missing something in my eyes. And usually it doesn't get drafted. Next up is Mew. Mew to me is better than the Zapdos. The best Pokemon we've covered so far, bar none. Definitely think it's here. Can do basically anything for a team. The best way to use Mew is to basically pretend like you don't have Mew on your team. And that way you can actually build a more well-balanced team that Mew just kind of fits on and can do whatever Mew wants to do. So yeah, let me know what your favorite Mew set is down in the comments below as well. Next up is Quagsire. Quagsire, what are you doing here? what are you doing here? Like, I want to see utility Pokemon, but this is like a 4 or 5 pointer. It should not be this high on. It should not be drafted in round 1. I think it was Lucas that did it. I think Jorge was the one that did Alolan Executor and BBR, but what are you gonna do? I think it's just, it is what it is. This is what was drafted, and I'm gonna be honest and transparent with you guys, but it should be here. Next up is Scizor. This is a round 2 or round 3 Pokemon in my eyes. I actually put it like this. I prefer actually having it this way here. I've been in situations where I'm like, I want to get Dragapult with Clefable or Garchomp with Clefable, and I want to get Scizor as my Steel type. And Scizor always gets sniped. And I feel like Scizor is so hard to replace for a team. Yes, it's a Steel type. A lot of Steel types around, a lot of Fairy types around, but Fairy types are usually better than Steel types. And the reason why I think Scizor is better than basically almost majority of other Fairy types is because it is a Steel type with U-turn, with recovery. It has access to priority. Obviously, those are all really good things, and that's why Scizor, in my eyes, is round 1 or 2. But honestly, it'll probably be like round 2, maybe round 3, but I do think it belongs above these 3 Pokemon here. Next up is Tyranitar. Tyranitar, in my eyes, is utility. Just a solid Pokemon overall. I put it actually above the Dragonite. It's really only there for if you need a dark type that's like defensive, but also can be offensive, and you don't want to go lower tiers. And it's also there for rocks, of course, but the main reason is sand. Sand is the main reason why you want this thing, and without sand, this Pokemon has a hard time fitting in my eyes, on a team. Next up is Latios. I think Latios is an argument for top 10. Really solid Pokemon overall. Allows you to be able to break really effectively with 110 base speed and 130 special attack. Its coverage is fantastic. This generation gets Mystical Fire and Aura Sphere and Baton Pass. You can do a lot of different things for a team. I just think that overall, there are going to be a lot more Pokemon I'd rather have than the Latios. Next up is Jirachi. I think Jirachi, hot take, is good, but not that good. I think Jirachi, the reason why you drafted is your team is really weak to Fairy and you want a well-balanced Steel type that has recovery. That's really it. And in general, it can do a lot of different things, but I think it struggles to do them like a Pokemon like Mew, which can do basically anything really well. I think Jirachi struggles in that regard. And the fact that it's weak to the fire moves, the ground moves, that the Steel type is weak to as well, it really hurts it. Like, Mew doesn't take super effective damage from those attacks, and it's still weak to the same Ghost and Dark attacks and Bug attacks, even though I guess it's not weak to Bug. But either way, you get my point. This Pokemon doesn't do enough in my mind to be in the top 10-ish or around 1 or 2 Pokemon. Next up is Garchomp, another Pokemon with 8 arguments for top 10. I'd actually put it like this in my mind. I think Garchomp has a lot of good things going for it. 102 base speed in a Galar Dex format. Only the Galar Dex is amazing. The fact that it's able to outspeed basically the average is really useful, and has access to rocks, it has access to Scale Shot, it has access to great coverage in dragon moves, ground moves, fire moves, rock moves. I believe it's fighting moves as well. It's just a solid Pokemon all around that can do a lot of good things for a team. Next up is going to be Weavile. I think Weavile is definitely round 1 or 2, and honestly, towards the end of round 2, I could see it going round 1. It makes sense to me that it has gone round 1 before, but what I put it round 1, I personally would not draft it round 1. Round 2 at the absolute earliest. That is my opinion on Weavile. Next up is Heatran. Heatran to me is round 1 or 2, but I also think it's good, but not that good. I think Heatran, it's going to make sense that it goes towards the round 1 or round 2, but my personal opinion on Heatran is very, very low compared to the masses. But I can state that the reason why Heatran is good is because people use it well, and because I'm actually going to put it really close to here. Arguably, I think it's above Scizor. I think Heatran, a lot of the time, I've been saying to myself, I want to try out Heatran. I want to try it out, see how it goes, but I always get sniped from me. I'm like, you know what? I got paid up earlier. Scizor in my mind is better as a Pokemon, but Heatran, I get the reason why Heatran will be higher up. So I'm actually gonna go, this is a tough one. I might switch this back later on, but for now I'll go with Scizor above the Heatran. Victini's next. Victini to me is not a top 10 Pokemon, but it is definitely a round 1 Pokemon, should be near the top of this category. I believe it is around 1 or round 2, arguably end of round 1, early round 2 at the latest where it should go unless it's not getting drafted. It's a solid Pokemon all around. Boots were fantastic for this. Scarf, Band, all great. Expert Belt is fantastic as well. A lot of good things going for Victini. Next up is Excadrill. This is a round 1 or round 2 Pokemon. I'd put it like this in my mind. Having Mold Breaker is awesome. Having Earthquake is awesome. Having the ability to Rapid Spin things away and get rocks up, really good. Abusing Sand is fantastic. It just, to my mind, the fact that it can only really run a few sets is not really indicative of a solid, strong Pokemon. It's really going to be like, is it going to Rapid Spin for Speed Boost and Swords Dance? Maybe. Is it going to be Scarf? Is it going to be just Swords Dance? Is it going to be Utility with Rapid Spin and Rocks or Toxic Stalling? Those are really it. It's not that variable. There's not that much variety is what I want to say with a Pokemon like Excadrill. Next up is Galadarm. This is good, but not that good. It is good, but not that good. This Pokemon was at one point in time like, oh yeah, S tier, top 10. No, it's not. This Pokemon does a lot of cool things for a team, but the main thing is it's a pivot, and it gets you in situations where you can force bulky waters in and then break them down with other Pokemon, which is really nice. So a Pokemon like this, paired with a Pokemon that's in the top 10-ish, is what you want to be going for. Not a Pokemon like this is just like the main cog of the team. That is not what Galadarm does. Not anymore, especially because you can run Protect to just basically nullify what it wants to do, which is really cool. Next up is going to be Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz, in my eyes, is good, but not that good, because it is not good enough to fall into, in my mind, the top 3 rounds, top 2 rounds, really. If you take this thing round 3, I get it. Usually you'll be seeing mana builds get drafted early if someone who has Dragapult wants it, and majority of the time that's going to be the first or second pick in the draft. So you're basically taking this in the round 3, like late round 2, early round 3. But I don't think it's that good of a Pokemon. I think it's just getting drafted there because that person with Dragapult doesn't want to use Dragapult against the Manabuzz. That's really the reason why. By the way, guys, if you haven't already, we're about halfway through the tier list. Make sure to leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think so far. Leave me a like as well. And comment the secret word of the day, which we're going to say is going to be pudding. So make sure to comment that down below. Say that you made it this far in the video. Let's go ahead and continue. Now, next up is going to be Hydreigon. Hydreigon has a lot of good things going for it. It's got an immunity to Psychic and to Ground with its ability. It's got really bulky stats. And also, it's got decent speed at 98. Its coverage is fantastic. Issue is, does it strike fear into my heart? No, it doesn't. I think I'd rather deal with Hydreigon than I'd rather deal with a Weavile, because Weavile has the speed, it has the stat knockoff, it has the ability to break through teams really effectively without running any speed boosting items or attacks. Hydra needs that, and you have access to fighting moves to still do the same amount of damage. Well, not the same amount, but you get the point. It'll still do a lot of damage to Hydra, like it will do a lot of damage to Weavile, but it also has to deal 4 times effective damage, or deal with 4 times effective damage coming in from fairy type attacks, which are super common in a competitive metagame. That's why it's down here. Next is Volcarona. It is good, but not that good. And I put it like this in my mind. I think that this also can drop down like right here. I think that Volcarona has some good things going for it as well. The fact that it's got 100 base speed is nice. The fact it can be bulky is really cool. It gets a U-turn, which not many people will actually run, but you really have to run boots on it. And that's why to me it falls down this low, which is not great. And you know what? I think I'm actually gonna bump. I think this, the more I'm looking at Mandibuzz, I feel like it's a utility Pokemon. That's what it is. It's a good Pokemon, but it's a utility Pokemon. It's not around 1 Mon. It's not around 2 Mon. I think it's not around 4 Mon. It just depends on what you want to do. And that's maybe my opinion of the Pokemon. It just doesn't do what I want it to. So sorry about that. Sorry about the Volcarona. Took away your screen time. But again, the fact you got to run boots basically every single matchup, I mean, you're not really going to be all that in my mind. Next up is going to be the Terrakion. I think Terrakion, you can make an argument for it to go round 2, but I think it's going to fall eventually in the good but not that good category. I think that at the end of the day, it'll be mostly drafted in like round 3 or 4, or like a late round high value pick. But the fact that it's not going to be that high because its speed here, while it's great, the fact that its coverage is decent with fighting move and ground moves and rock moves and steel and poison for the fairy types, and Mega Horn is just, it doesn't do enough damage. It's strong, but you got to run the Life Orb. You got to run the Band. You got to get the +2. You don't want to have to do all those things. You want to be able to break right away. Garchomp can break a lot more effectively right away than Terrakion can. And that's why Garchomp is higher. And even though its speed is lower, its typing is better. It has an immunity. Terrakion does not. Moving on is going to be Torn. This is another Pokemon that finally gets to jump into the top 10-ish tier. In my mind, it's an argument right now. Is it Mew or is it Torn? Which one is it going to be? And honestly, for right now, I'll leave it like this with Mew being ahead just because it can do a bit more, but Tornadus gets so many good things going for it. U-turn with Regenerator is fantastic. Icy Wind for speed control is nice. Taunt shuts down setup. It gets Defog as well. It can set up with Nasty Plot. It can be physical or special. It's an amazing Pokemon that can be really bulky without you investing much into it. And if you can build a team around dealing with ice types, rock types, electric types, Tornadus T is fantastic. Just an amazing Pokemon all around. Next up is Lando T. Lando T is, I want to put it over here. I want to put it over here so badly. It has an argument to be top 10-ish, but for, you know what, for now, I'll put it at the bottom of top 10-ish. I think that if I get to the point where I'm like, you know what, there's too many Mons here, I'll drop it down because I think Lando is really overrated in competitive draft league. In OU and Smogon, yeah, go ahead, put it top of this here. In doubles and VGC, top tier. I give it respect. I get that it's solid, but for me, in my eyes, Lando just it's getting here-ish. This is where I think it would go. Either way, we'll keep it here for now. Next up, we're looking at Kyurem. Kyurem is, in my mind, a round 1 Pokemon, but it is not in the top 10 as of right now. I think that it's actually, no, what am I saying? It definitely is in the top 10-ish. It makes sense to put it around the top 10 because it can do a lot of good things for a team, but I think the metagame has actually gone away from Kyurem a little bit. People prefer other Pokemon in general, and that's why I think Kyurem kind of falls towards the bottom of the top 10-ish. I do think that is better than Landorus in my eyes, though. Next up is going to be Keldeo. This is definitely going to fall into the round 1 or 2, probably towards the bottom, because most of the time people will look at this and say, oh, it's a great bulky water. Oh, it's a not bulky water, great offensive water. It's a great offensive fight that's special, gets momentum with flip turn. It's great. Its coverage is ass though. It's Air Slash. It's Icy Wind as the ice attack, not Ice Beam, Icy Wind. It's got Scald and Hydro Pump, sure, and it's got good fighting moves, but that's really it. It's not enough. It should be doing more than that. It's super offensive, which is great, but I think that it's really not useful in many situations. because you want to be able to use something usually faster. You want a fighting type that gets more fighting type momentum, or like U-turn, I'd say, which is better because then it'll do a bit more damage to certain things. And Keldeo attacks that is really pitiful, so Flip Turn's not going to do very much to it. I don't know. I think it makes sense to put it down over here. Next up is going to be Aegislash. This is round 1 or round 2. Usually I see this getting paired with something in the wheel, maybe like around the 15 or like what's maybe like the 14 to like 20 pick, around that range, maybe about when that 14 to like 22. But that's really where I see Aegislash going in most drafts. It just does not, in my mind, have an argument for being in the top 10 Pokemon of this generation, really. Next up is going to be Zygarde. I think this Pokemon definitely has an argument for being top 10. It's really bulky. It has the ability to 1,000 arrows things. That's really the main reason why you would go with Zygarde over Pokemon like Garchomp. But really, it has a lot of utility with that. It has Glare. It's a fantastic Toxic Staller. Its best sets, in my mind, aren't even the sweeping sets. It's the sets that are just bulky and annoying teams all around. It gets Extreme Speed. It gets access to Sludge Wave and Sludge Bomb to deal with Pokemon like Tapu Bulus or Whimsicots, really. And in general, the fact that you're running sub a lot of the time with this Pokemon is really, really crazy. I just wish it had reliable recovery. If it did, that'd be absolutely insane on this Pokemon. And speed stat 95 is not bad at all, and it's really, really bulky. Also, why is this attack stat 100? Why is it only 100? That's nothing. It should be higher than that. It should. Whatever. Next up is Como. I'm going to assume this is Clanging Scales, and no, it is not going to here. It is going, in my mind, not even to here. Let's put it in good, but not that good. With the Omni Boosting, in a league that is going to be very focused on competitive side, and there's a lot of really strong people there, they're not going to let it Omni Boost. They're going to have ways around it. They're going to have Roar. They're going to have Eject Packs. They're going to have whatever to be able to get around this thing going for attacks. And you have to really rely on taking a third of your health to really be as offensive as you want to be. Nuh-uh. I think it's good, but not that good, even though it can Omni Boost. Next up is going to be the Tapu Koko. Definitely top 10-ish. I think, honestly, it'd probably go like this for right now. Koko is fantastic in the metagame. The fact that it gets Voltage and U-turn just like Zapdos, the fact that it gets Recovery, it's a fairy type, it has access to screens, it's super fast, it's just a really good Pokemon overall. And while its coverage is not the best, it's got like Brave Bird, and then it's like Electric Move, Fairy Move, and then a Steel Wing and Grass Knot, really, that's enough. And the fact that it has that boost to its attack stat or special attack stat or really any electric attack by 1.3 because of its terrain is what makes it just that much better. Without the terrain, it wouldn't be all that, but the terrain makes it obscenely good and definitely has an argument for one of the 5 best Pokemon, and let alone the top 10 best Pokemon. Next up, and what do we have already? We already got 9 Pokemon here in the top 10, and I got some Pokemon here that I definitely can see making it to the top 10. We got quite a few of them, so let's go ahead and continue. Next up is Lele. Lele, in my mind, is good, but not that good. A lot of the time, people would rather get something else, a different fairy type. They're going to go this high in the draft to get a fairy type. I think Lele makes sense as a farther down pick. It's just the fact that speed is not where it needs to be to match up with Koko, the fact that it's not as bulky as something like Tapu Fini. It hits hard, don't get me wrong, but it got nerfed this generation because you don't have access to something like the 1.5 boost in special attack or in psychic type attacks. It's 1.3 now. And honestly, I'd rather have a boost my fairy type attacks than my psychic type attacks. There are a lot of really good Tapu Lele sets. I just think that in general, it's fallen from grace pretty hard this generation, where in past gens, it's like, wow, is this a top 3, top 5 Pokemon? Not anymore. Not anymore. Buzzwole. Buzzwole is good, but not that good. It is good, but not that good. I put it like this, actually. I put this a bit higher here, more like this. I think Buzzwole has a lot of good things going for it, but the fact that it's able to resist a lot, it is super physically defensive, has recovery in Roost or in Drain Punch or Leech Life, has the ability to bulk up for days, has the ability to sweep things with a Scarf, and with Beast boosting up its attack is fantastic. It can do a lot for a team. The issue is it's very situational for when you want to have a really good Buzzwole set. A lot of the time, matchups will be like dependent on, does your opponent have access to special flying coverage? I've run Air Slash on Terrakion to deal with Buzzwole, and it works. That's just how it is. That's just how it is. You're going to deal really, like, when you're dealing with a Pokemon that has 4 times effective damage against it, it's really hard to be able to win successfully with that Pokemon because it's going to have such a glaring weakness there. And that's one of the faults for the Buzzwole. Next up is Celesteela. We have another Ultra Beast here. I think Celesteela can make sense about this range here, maybe even like this. Celesteela is really, really bulky, has a lot of good sets for it, whether it's a Totemize, whether it's Meteor Beam, whether it's physical or special. It can be defensive with what is it called? Leech Seed. It can be Subseed. It can be just in general so many different things that can do all the sets really, really well. It's the fact that it does everything so well that puts it up here, because Pokemon like Clefable can do a lot of different things as well. They don't do them as well as something like Celesteela does, and that's why it's this high up on the list. Next up is Necrozma. Necrozma is good, but not that good. I think it has some things going for it that are obviously not the way, well, they're not obviously the best case scenario for this Pokemon, because it's the fact that it doesn't get a really good special fighting move or a good way to hit dark types outside of like Brick Break or X's are really. Obviously, you want to have better than that. You really do. But I think Necrozma can fall down probably around this range. Yeah. The more I'm looking at it, I'm like, is Cheetar going to be in the good but not that good tier, or is it more utility Pokemon? I'll keep it like this for now. When I did this team builder, when I made when I first import everything here, I said, you know what? I feel like there's gonna be a really heavy emphasis on the top 3 tiers because the rest of the Pokemon, like everything is good here. Everything's good. But like, why is Mandibuzz round 1? Why is Gyarados or Exeggutor round 1? A lot of the time, these are the Pokemon that are going round 1. I'd be so surprised to see many other Pokemon at all, unless there's memes. Next up is Zera. This is a Pokemon with the top 10 argument, I'd say top 5 argument. It's one of the few Pokemon that I have not used this generation for a full entire league. Everything else in tier number 1 I have used for at least one full league. I just wish I could use it. Its coverage is great. Fighting moves, fairy moves, not flying moves, fire moves, electric type attacks, obviously really good. Has grass on the special side. It can be just a fantastic Pokemon all around. Can set up physically or special, and its speed, 143 I believe is the speed. It is just absolutely insane. Really an amazing Pokemon all around. Melmetal. Melmetal in my mind is like round 1 or 2. I see it going a lot round 2. I don't think it deserves to be going round 2, but I can understand why it has been going because it's a really good steel type. And in a format like this where you can double iron bash through a lot of different things, and if you can build a team that's going to be able to heal it back up with wish support, I get it. The issue is it's a steel type that does not get rocks, which I do not like. And a Pokemon like Scizor, which is also a steel that does not get rocks, at least gets knockoff, at least gets U-turn, which is really good, at least gets priority too. You want to have a steel with rocks. Your steel type has to be able to do something. And while Celesteela can't get rocks either, it can do a lot more than something like Melmetal can. It's much more one-dimensional. Next up is Rillaboom rather. Rillaboom is round 1 or round 2. I think Rillaboom is actually going to go like this. It's near the top of the tier for sure. The way I'm looking at it is like Rillaboom is also a Pokemon I have not had the chance to use it for a full league because I don't think it's as good as a lot of people do, but I understand how good it can be because if you have a team that's just weak to grass, then Rillaboom is going to decimate you because it has priority Grassy Glide. It gets recovery for a team. It's a very common core to pair with Heatran, okay? Or type of Blue is also common to pair with Heatran. It's also good to pair with any ground type that just does not get access to Earthquake or does not take advantage of Earthquake. Think of the Nidokings. It's a solid Pokemon overall. It has utility with U-turn, has a knockoff as well, which is great. Can set up a Swords Dance, can be Scarf, can be Banned, can do so many different things, can be Subseed. It just does a lot for a team. I like it, but it's not, in my mind, in the argument for top 10. Next up is Corviknight. Okay. Unpopular opinion here. Corviknight is a utility Pokemon. Yeah, look, I think this Pokemon does not get the job done. It has no argument in my mind to being in the top round of the draft. I think it was drafted there mostly because people were like, oh, it's a new Pokemon. This thing gets very few sets. It's not offensive enough off of Rip. It's not defensive enough in my mind against the types it needs to be defensive enough against. Like, fighting types can just break through this Pokemon really effectively, and the fact that it can be set up water for a lot of different things is really not what you want to do. Obviously, it has some good sets with with Mirror Armor to be able to be immune to certain stat dropping moves, which is cool. It has the ability to set up alongside your opponent. It has Taunt. I just think that it's missing something. If this thing had Toxic, that'd be fantastic. If this thing had Rocks, that'd be fantastic. But the fact that it doesn't get those 2 utility moves there really weakens what I expect of Corviknight, and that's why I have it in the utility tier. Next up is going to be Toxtricity. Why are you here? You're obviously, I think, like, okay, I get why these went first. I get why these things have gone first. Like, if you want to have a Pokemon that's a fantastic Dynamax Pokemon, yeah, Gyarados makes some sense there. Toxtricity does not. It does not make sense for it to be that high. It really doesn't. That's just an opinion. Next up is going to be Dracovish. Dracovish is good but not that good, and I think Dracovish has more of an argument around this range here. People have started to learn how to prep around Dracovish, and that's why it's fallen from favor. It used to be like one of the best Pokemon out there. People would draft it round 1 all the time. I see it falling. Like, out of all the Pokemon that have the chance of going round 1, 2, 3, 4, this thing falls a lot. It really does. And depending on what your team is, it can do well, but if your team is not able to break down bulky waters or bulky grasses, then don't bother with Dracovish. You need to make sure you have a team built around it a lot more than the other Pokemon. You can just say, I'm building around this Pokemon and I'm going to be able to do anything. Dracovish is very one-dimensional. Next up is going to be Dragapult. Without a doubt, the best Pokemon in Draft League, period. Point blank, end of story. You know that Dragapult deserves to be this high on the list. It is just such an amazing Pokemon. It is fast as hell. It gets access to great coverage options. It can do so many different things. Physical, special, setting up. It can be utility. It can go through screens. There's a lot going for it. At this point in time, what do we have in the top 10-ish? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We got 12. These are all arguments. You can make an argument for all these Pokemon, but like I said, I think I'm going to have to bump the Landorus down to the next tier. Either way, next is going to be Urshifu Rapid Strike. It is good, but not that good. I'd say, honestly, it's probably around this range here. It's really cool. The issue is it just folds so hard to Rocky Helmet. Why did Rocky Helmet have to be just the absolute counter to this Pokemon? It's crazy. It cannot break through bulky waters as effectively as it wants to. It cannot break through bulky grasses as effectively as it wants to. Yes, it has U-turn. That is a saving grace. If this Pokemon did not have U-turn, I think it would be honestly in the utilities here, because it would just be a physical breaker like a Mienshao that's not as fast. Yeah, that's really what I think of Urshifu Rapid Strike. I love it. I think it's really good, but it's not that good. Next up is Urshifu Single Strike. Let's pop it up over here in the second place spot. However you want to slice it. Urshifu and Dragapult, they are the top 2 Pokemon in the Draft League format. Period. Point blank. End of story. I gotta say it 100 times. Everyone's gotta know this by now. This is the end of the generation. You know these Pokemon are the best. It makes sense that they're here. Next up is Zarude. Zarude is good, but not that good. I think it's gonna fall probably around, I always put things so low to start. I'm like, I put it like this. I think that's Zarude. Actually, let's go here. Zarude has a really unique typing of grass and dark. It's really cool. It gets access to U-turn, which is awesome. The fact that it relies, though, on Darkest Lariat instead of Knockoff as its dark move takes it down a bunch. If this thing got Knockoff, it would definitely, in my mind, be in round 1 or round 2. But it doesn't get Knockoff, and because of that, you have to drop it over here. It gets access to Synthesis, which is great for recovery, and to Jungle Healing to prevent it from getting, or to stop it from taking damage from status moves and to remove the status, which is cool. It just doesn't do enough in my mind. In Ubers, it has a lot of utility as a great bulky dark type, but in the regular format, I think it falls short quite a bit. Next up, Glastrier. Why are you here? I think you're worse than Quagsire. Why are you here? It doesn't make any sense that this Pokemon was even drafted this early, but it is new toy syndrome. That's why it's here. And our final Pokemon is going to be the Spectrier. Spectrier is good, but it is not that good. That is basically it. This Pokemon has 130 base speed, but it cannot touch normal types. It cannot touch dark types outside of like Mudshot or Hyper Beam. So yeah, that's why I have it over here so low in this ranking right now. But guys, that is basically my tier. Let's gonna do a quick adjustment here. I'm gonna put Landorus down here, and then I think this is kind of how I want to rock with it. This is basically what I'm going to go with. Landorus has some. It makes sense that it's here. My opinion of Landorus has decreased over time. It went up and then it went back down. I'm going to put it down here in round number 2. I recently did a video, not recently, but about a year ago, I did a video covering the top 10 Pokemon in Draft League. And if you want to see more of an exact representation of what I think of at that point in time, go back and watch it. It'll be linked in the top right corner of the screen of the cards. Also, guys, remember to make sure to leave a comment on this video. Let me know what you think about this tier list, what you think about my rankings, and what you guys would do instead. Also, like the video, comment secret of the day, subscribe to the channel, and give me suggestions. What are we doing next, guys? Let me know down in the comments, and I will see you guys all. Well, thanks for watching first. Now, I will see you guys all next time.